Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video on CRAP principle designs. So in our last video, we talked about what the CRAP principle designs were and how they can be used in an infographic. But I just wanted to kind of use this as an application time for for examining a graphic that doesn't have a lot of information, and finding places that the designer of this infographic has used the CRAP principles of design. And after we do that, we're going to dive into how you can use CRAP principles in a single page format, as well as a broader idea and a broader spectrum in an infographic. So let's first talk about this infographic right here. And it doesn't really have a lot of information. It's more of maybe a cover page or just a compelling image. So when we look at it, we might not be able to see a lot of contrast or repetition or alignment or proximity, but there actually is a lot of design that we see in here. So one thing that we can examine with the contrast are these different colors. We see that the designer has used a green here, this blue, this red, this purple, this yellow. And it really creates this visual pop of color that's super interesting to look at. And it just kind of draws your eyes to each different topic so that you kind of view all the little graphics that are placed inside. Now, while we have that contrast aspect, we want to focus on the repetition aspect that's being used and how the two balance each other out. So we do have these different colors and these different sizes of diamonds, but what we have is a very consistent use of the diamond as a shape. We see all these diamonds on this page, and it creates a really nice visual image with that repetition. It's pleasing to the eye. We would have a very different design if they used circles for some and diamonds for others and hearts and stars and kind of had a lot of contrast, because then we wouldn't have a very cohesive image here. Next, I wanted to talk about alignment. We notice that all of these images in the center, as well as the text in the center of this diamond, they're all center aligned so that they are put in the very center of that diamond. Now, this doesn't really have as much impact except for making it look neat. So if this wasn't placed in the center of the diamond, it might look a little bit sloppy and it might be a little bit visually unappealing. Now, I also wanted to talk about proximity. So one aspect of proximity is that we have all these different groupings. Each item gets their own diamond. Now, there aren't really groups. However, because there aren't really groups and there aren't really a lot of images that are paired together, there isn't much of a need for groups. So by not utilizing groups in here, the proximity lines up super well, because we see that we have this chart here, these settings buttons, these little cogs in a machine, as well as the speech bubble. And we kind of get all these different images, even though they are super closely related because of the alignment and because of the repetition of this diamond shape. So now that we've kind of examined this graphic as just a really simple graphic, let's examine some ways that we can use design principles within an infographic that has a lot of information packed into it. So I'm going to show the infographic from before. We're going to go into preview up here and talk about ways that we've used CRAP design throughout. So, and just in single pages. So if you look here, contrast, I've used contrast in this page to show examples of contrast. So you have the tone and value, the direction, you show the contrast of those two items and how they really help each other, as well as the colors throughout. If you see, I've used this red and orange, as well as these shape sizes, and that's kind of how we've used contrast in this section. When we move on to repetition, we notice that each of these icons with the lightning bolt is repeated. And not only are these lightning bolt icons repeated, but the text underneath the icons are repeated as well, which creates a really nice image. It creates a nice eye-catching view of this infographic that's really helpful in our understanding of what CRAP design is. Finally, next we have alignment. You can see here that in these circles are all aligned, as well as the text bubbles within the circle. So each design element should line up. All of these design elements do line up because of how the circles have been spread across the paper. And finally, we have proximity. So proximity is a little bit harder to grasp, but what I like to think of as is that similar items should be grouped together. So when we really break it down, I've organized it in shapes here. So I have created 4 stars that are all in a block, 4 hearts in a block, 4 of these parallel, 4 of these shapes in a block, and 4 of the circles in a block. And when I did that, it creates that proximity that we group them apart and we show the differences between things. So that helps emphasize our organization and it really increases comprehension, which we talked about in that last video. So now that we've talked about each of these on like a single area and a single design page style, let's talk about how we've used crap designs throughout the document. So when you get into the main, so after these like this title page and then this subheading page that I've created, we have these pages right here, which are all similar. So let's talk about first the contrast. One contrast that I find throughout is that we use different colors. So orange and blue are very complementary colors. They clash with each other in the slightest way that you can create images that pop out from each other. And you can kind of see throughout that we've created this color scheme with the red and the blue and the orange and the white. And it really creates this visual pop and creates those focal points. However, we also need to make sure we like pull in the reins on those focal points. So one way we do that is by using repetition throughout the document. So we do have differences in the document. We have contrast in the colors. However, we don't use an overwhelming amount of colors. We keep that repetition similar throughout the document. That way we can see how these design principles lay out. You'll see that we have headings are all in this red box. And we've also made subheadings in white font. We don't really differentiate the fonts either, which is very helpful when it comes to creating designs. Next, let's talk about alignment. If you look here, a lot of this is center alignment justified, just because it creates a nice visual and it helps you center things to another image. You'll look and you'll see that color, tone, and value. All of these are centered along the blocks down here, as well as shape, size, and direction. And the alignment of the center aspect, the four types of contrast, is kind of put in that center. One area that I think alignment is important is proximity. Alignment and proximity is another one that kind of goes hand in hand with each other. You can't have good proximity if you don't have good alignment. So if you see here, these stars wouldn't be as well grouped together if they didn't have this sort of alignment that we see right here. Same with the hearts. Another thing that we see with proximity is the whole design of the document. We don't put contrast and repetition and alignment and proximity all on the same page and then create examples. We have this proximity of like an overview of what crap is. And then we go into little breakdowns of each. And you can kind of see where you're talking about contrast, and then you talk about repetition, and you talk about alignment, and then you talk about proximity. And it really helps with that visual aspect of being able to properly see where the infographic is going, and it helps you tell that story that you want to be able to tell through your infographic. And that's really all I have for this video. I hope that was helpful in understanding how to create designs, whether it's a photo spread or another infographic that you might have in a yearbook page. So thank you so much for coming and watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.